Hi, everybody. This is Shira Adler, and welcome back to the Synergy Show. I am very, very excited, so excited to introduce not just another episode of the Synergy Show, but specifically an episode that focuses on my greatest love and passion. For those who know my work in the world or have read the ABCs of CBD, you know that I am one very, very happy hempster. And I've been very privileged and honored to be a vetted hemp industries leader in the past. I'm working on a second book in the trilogy of the ABCs, all of the information around hemp and cannabis, the same species, different cultivars. If that statement alone is unfamiliar, then go and read the first book now. But I'm really excited to introduce that there is a second book coming out, the ABCs for A's, B's, C's, and D's, architects, builders, contractors, and designers. Why? Because while the first book covered the world history of hemp and cannabis, it focused more on wellness, the political landscape, kind of the intro in general as to all things hemp related. The second book, however, is very specifically focused on hemp agritech. Now, if you don't know what that means, consider this. Hemp is not just used for wellness in terms of the products like mine that you get at shirasynergy.com, all the products that go inside your body that affect how we are in relationship within our own physical bodies. But the other side of what hemp is and does, and has always been the case, especially since the foundation of the United States of America, it's focused on the materials with which we live. So there's synergy not just in how that plant affects our bodies, but how it affects and literally integrates our living built world, our physical environment, our homes, our offices, construction. And more, you're hearing this lovely word tossed around a little too frequently without the connection to what it really means: sustainability. When we talk about sustainability, very often people think bamboo flooring or natural materials. But how those natural materials are gathered, how they're grown, how they're manufactured, how they're processed, how they're applied is what truly defines sustainability. And regenerative materials. That's the other word you're going to hear a lot, not just in today's interview, but in the future interviews that are going to focus on agritech, taking agriculture, technology, putting them together, and improving the way we as humans live and build. And that's why I'm so excited to introduce my first guest to really, really focus on this, a true expert, one of one of the best, most reputable colleagues I am blessed to know and have in this industry, Cameron McIntosh, the owner of a company in Pennsylvania called Americhanvre. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Thank you, Shira. That was a great intro. I really appreciate it, and very grateful for the path that some of the first movers like yourself created. So again, thank you very much for all the work that you've done in the past, and yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
So let me tell our listeners and our viewers today, and whenever you come across this video, it will always be, it's what we call perennial content, meaning that whether you are brand new to understanding what hemp is, what agritech is about, this will always be relevant and resonant. Your company, my dear friend, Americhanvre, is a hempcrete company. And even that word might be new to some of our people, and for others, they might be really excited going, oh, I've heard of that. So let's start with the fundamentals. I mean, really, it is a new concept for people to think, wait, hemp and crete, as in concrete, as in walls and structure, as in, yes, you can build a house or retrofit an entire commercial or build a sustainable community. Yeah, all with the plant, hemp. So I am curious, just to get people to get to know you, what first drew you into this business? And honestly, what kind of personal values are keeping you here? Because for those of us who know this industry, being in hemp is not for the faint of heart. So how'd you get started in this? Why hempcrete?
Yeah, so I was actually working for a native plant nursery here local to me in Pennsylvania in 2018. I'd been there for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. And we were selling a lot of our plants into container gardens and things like that, rooftop gardens in New York City. The High Line, for example, a lot of our plants went into developing the High Line for those of you that are familiar. And so my background is actually in ceramics. I have a pottery degree. And there is a working history museum here in Pennsylvania called the Moravian Pottery and Tile Works, where they work with a catalog of reissued Art Deco tile that was originally designed in the 1920s. Very famously, the entire floor of the Capitol building in Harrisburg, our state Capitol building, is done with this tile. So if anybody's ever been there, you've seen Mercer tiles. So I had this wild idea to unite my skills in pottery with what we were doing with native plants, and I wanted to make planter boxes with handmade tile. There is an appetite for handmade tile here in this part of Pennsylvania, whether it's for high-end custom backsplashes in kitchens or again even fireplace surrounds and flooring. And so I had this wild idea that I wanted to make these handmade tiles and put them on planter boxes. And so I made one. The first one I made was out of concrete. The base of the box was made out of concrete, and it was maybe 2 feet by a foot and a half, and equally as tall. It was ungodly heavy. Me and my boss at the time, who's my size, it was a struggle for us to even pick it up and put it on the tailgate of a truck. So I knew right then and there that, to compete in that space, I was going to have to, make these things lighter. And so that begat sort of a search for an alternative substrate for making those planter boxes. And one of the first things I landed on was aerated concrete,
Mhm.
which sort of gave me a window or a visual into natural building. And that's where I first came across or stumbled across the term hempcrete. And I made the same mistake that a lot of people make when they hear that word. Hempcrete is not a substitute for concrete.
Right.
As the name would lead you to believe, it is not a substitute for concrete. However, that sort of had me interested, and I started looking around, and I found local to us here, there's a company called Limeworks in Telford, PA, limeworks.us, and they do historic masonry repair, lime plasters, repair mixes for historic brick and stone. And they also make a pre-bagged hempcrete binder. So again, this is 2018. This is one of the only companies at that time in the entire country that had such a thing, a pre-made hempcrete binder. So fortunately for me, they were only about 15, 20 minutes from where I worked at the time, and only about 30 or 40 minutes from where I lived. So I took a workshop at Limeworks in 2018. I was the only one that took it. It was me and all the guys that worked there, and they had set out and were intending to insulate a structure on the property. And regardless of the fact that they only had one person apply, they went ahead and held the workshop anyway, which to my benefit was a
Wow.
wonderful experience. I got a one-on-one basically.
That's amazing. What an
Yeah,
opportunity that you did not know was going to open the doors to
right.
everything you do now.
The first of many cosmic pushes, if you will, that sort of brought me to where I am. And for those of you in the hemp industry, you'll understand what I mean when I say that. There's a lot of sort of unexplainable energy here, right? Whether it's the plant or the planet or whoever you want to assign that to. But so yeah, at the end of that experience, they realized I was capable. In my former career, I was essentially the operations manager for the native plant nursery. We did a lot of publicly bid work, stormwater management, stream bank stabilization, tree planting contracts. And so through that, I had learned, quite a bit about managing a business, doing estimates, competitive estimates, competitive bids. Um, and so, they realized through the course of that workshop that I was capable. And at the end of it, they said, "Hey, man, we get a lot of inquiries for people who are looking for, a contractor who's capable of installing this. Would you be interested in, being on our sort of referral list?" That was the genesis of Americhanvre. So I think it was probably June or July of that year that I formed my LLC along with my wife, Melissa, who is a corporate accountant. She has her master's. Really wonderful person, business partner to start a business with, as you can imagine. To have your financials all in line, even when you're not making money, is more powerful than people give it credit for. So,
You two are the dynamic duo. You stepped into this space
Yes.
with the perfect combination. Not to mention, you're also parents, and I just
Right.
love everything about you guys, how you've built and how you started, and understanding and coming from the adoration of plants. So you
Yeah.
end up going into then hempcrete. And so before I ask the next question, then yes, people do immediately assume that we're replacing concrete, but it is a
Right.
structural building material. It is now certified. So what do you think from your vantage point? What is the most misunderstood concept then, besides that, or maybe it is just that, about hemp construction in the US, and what do you think really needs to change for greater adoption? Let's first start with just really simply, what is hempcrete able to do for structures? And then
Right.
what's misunderstood and what do we need to change?
Yeah, again, like I said earlier, the word hempcrete is somewhat of a misnomer. It implies a similarity to concrete. It is not a replacement. It is not a one-to-one to concrete. It's almost a theological argument within our community where that word makes people want it to be concrete, and it is not. It is first and foremost a lightweight insulation and walling material. Obviously, it's a bio-based building material derived from the inner woody core or the hemp hurd, which is the stalk of the fiber industrial hemp plant. I want to be really clear about that. This is not cannabinoid. This is not CBD. This is not
Okay.
THC. This is true agricultural fiber and grain
The
commodity hemp that we're
inside,
talking
and I
about.
do want to specify that. So there
Correct.
are different components because I've talked about that in my first book, and we're absolutely going to clarify it in the second
Yep.
because you have different cultivars that do different things. If you're
Yes.
growing, you have to know what you're growing for, whether you're going to cannabinoids, wellness, flower aspects, if you're going through stock, industrial, where you're growing, what type, where it grows is based on that relationship to nature itself. Then there's the inside of the stalk and the outside, and they're used for different purposes. So you are specifically referencing, when we talk about hempcrete, the inside.
Correct. Yeah, the inner woody core. And I like to draw the comparison to say that, you know, cannabinoid hemp is horticulture, right? You're growing a plant for its flower, for its oil, which is then, turned into a variety of different products. But with fiber industrial hemp, it's agriculture, right? This is large scale agriculture. The two types of farming are very different. You're
Right.
talking about, four or 500,000 stems per acre with fiber industrial hemp versus what maybe 1,000 stems per acre with, or maybe
Flower.
1,500 with cannabinoid hemp, right? So
Yeah.
very different. But again, what I think makes Hempcrete very, very cool and very interesting, and where I would encourage your viewers and the way that I approach construction professionals is to say what makes this interesting is that we are using a rapidly, annually, and agriculturally renewable feedstock for building, right? We're taking a vegetal aggregate, in this case, again, the inner woody core of the fiber hemp stalk, mixing it with a lime binder, and water, and then introducing it into a wall system. And as you can see in the photo behind me, it is not structural. It is self-supporting. It is capable of holding its own weight, and it is capable of being a good substrate for a finish like lime plaster. But it is not structural. You can see the frame in the building behind me, right? So we're working
Yeah.
with standard codified, contemporary framing techniques, whether it's wood or steel, and we're installing this material around that frame. So it does have a masonry-like habit. I will say it does have a masonry-like habit. It is cementitious when you feel it. But
I love that
again,
word, cementitious. Oh my gosh, that's
you can see here.
that's fantastic. What a great word. And there is
Yeah,
something to be said when I mentioned structural earlier. It holds its structure. It actually has some
correct.
other benefits. Obviously, it sucks the
Yep,
carbon out and it holds it in the molecular structure within. So it's a permanent sequestration of the carbon, which is part of what the sustainability and all of these beautiful agri-tech models want to be. But you
right.
can use it with regular plywood and hemp plywood. So we have colleagues. So when I say structural, I mean there are other components in hemp agritech that together can be used along with some traditional materials. So it really is almost a personal design qualification, whether it's a retrofit or a new build will impact what materials are used. But the fact is, you have a technique and well, more than technique, an actual technology that is specific, that can adapt to any environment, to any structure, to any of these other materials. It works in harmony with the earth,
Correct.
and the
Yep.
process itself is completely bioavailable, meaning that even in how you make this and how hempwood is made are actually good for the environment. So, going back
Absolutely.
to that other
Yep.
question, so what's really misunderstood about hemp construction other than no, we're not replacing everything, we're just doing this healthier and better, and we're still making leaps and bounds and improvements consistently. I wrote my book and published the first edition in January 2018. So that is still, we are the pioneers, we're the early adopters into some of this information. We've come a long
Absolutely.
way, baby. We've come a
Yep.
long way, is that right? So,
Yeah.
what do you think needs to change for more people to, besides content like this, right? What needs to change until real adoption can occur? So, builders and developers and architects go, oh, I didn't know we could use this in place of what? So, what is hempcrete really? Let's talk about the insulation factors, the benefits of it. What needs to change to really make this the go-to?
Well, we've been sort of knocking those walls down as we go. One of the most important things was to create and write a residential building code appendix for building with this material. That's first and foremost, I think, probably the most earth-shattering thing that's happened since my time in the industry. In about 2019-20, we joined together as an industry. We actually raised the money via the U.S. Hemp Building Association and a series of benefactors, donors who came together to raise the money to pay to hire consultants who were knowledgeable in how to write residential building codes. So we joined together. I was part of a small team, maybe 5 or 6 people that actually sat down to write the residential building code. That effort was led by then president of the U.S. Hemp Building Association, Jacob Waddell. We hired 2 consultants, Martin Hammer and David Eisenberg. And then we also had a third consultant, which is Anthony Dente of Verdant Structural. He's a structural engineer. We hired those guys basically to help us, not to tell us what to write, but how to write it. And so these three are responsible for not only the current, Appendix BL, which is for Hempcrete, but also the straw bale, light straw, clay adobe, and tiny home appendices, all 4 of which now are in the residential building code. So that was critical. Having prescriptive guidance for code enforcement officials, for architects, for engineers on exactly how are you supposed to design, how are you supposed to work with this material and do it in such a way where health and human safety of the occupant is top of
Of course,
mind, right? So
of course.
that was really critical. So again, a small team of us joined to write it. And then we invited the input of, I would say, about 25 or 30 experts from around the world. This is where the material originated, was in the UK and in France. It's where it's most common. And so once we had it written, we invited the input from the global community to sort of say, if we were on track or not. And then in, I believe, 2021, it actually went in front of the ICC committee and was passed. I believe 7 out of 10 votes were in favor of it. So it was not a close thing. They were quite open to it. Most recently here, even this past year, I met with Martin Hammer and Anthony Dente in Cleveland in September of this year to get some fire testing that we had done personally. Our company had done a 1 hour fire resistance test, and we were successful in lobbying the ICC committee to get that information included in the building code. So we're in this constant cycle of, improving that code. It's a living document. All codes are. And then
Right,
one other thing I will say
right,
is that the charge, and for those of you that are listening that are, construction professionals of any kind in any given state, the other issue that we're working on now is that the way that individual states and even sometimes municipalities adopt and accept updates to the code is often 3 or 4 years behind where the code is actually at. So I'll give you an example. The city of Austin. There were a handful of my colleagues, including again architects, builders, real estate agents. All of the key components in the construction industry. They joined together and lobbied the city of Austin to accept this update to their code. They were successful. So now the city of Austin has made it so that essentially, if you are looking to build with hempcrete, you are free to do so. Another example of that is the state of Minnesota. So the state of Minnesota is the first state where a similar thing happened. A group of architects and builders joined together, including, our good friend Danny Desjardins from the Lower Sioux Indian community, joined together and lobbied the state to accept this update to the code. So for those of you that are listening and wondering, how do I push this forward in my area? That is critically important. Learn what is happening code wise in your city, in your state, and then go and put yourself in front of those people and make the case. It also happened recently again in the state of Virginia. One of our colleagues, Scott McStacy, was successful in putting this in front of the state building code. So forthcoming in the state of Virginia as well. So one by one, we're working through it. I will say that in my own experience now, 50 plus projects that we've been a part of, we have never been told no. We have never been told by code enforcement that we couldn't do it. We were never told we weren't allowed to do this. So that's important to understand as well. If your state has not accepted this update to the code, its mere existence is enough often for you to get your house built. They are not allowed to just tell you no as code enforcement officials. They can make your life miserable. Don't piss them off.
Right. Play
But
nicely in the sandbox
yes,
with others. That's
play
always the
nicely.
right way to approach
But
things.
but
Sure.
if you're interested in doing this, the only thing holding it back is your desire to get it done. So again, tying our conversation together here, the fact that it is not structural, we are not building the house out of weed. It is not
Right.
structural. It is an insulation walling material. Yes, it takes the place of, a variety of different materials in a traditional wall assembly, plywood, pink insulation, drywall, it does remove those materials. But again, it is not so major of a departure from the way that we are building. And that's a good point you made earlier, Shira. Specifically with our technology, we have worked very hard to find ways to make hempcrete more palatable, more normal, I guess is the best way to say it
Right.
for the construction professionals within the industry.
So now speaking about that, that was a perfect segue to my next question about technology and innovation. You have a very specific system called the Izzy system, and your approach using the Izzy system is different from any other, and there aren't that many. I mean, let's be real. You are still kind of out there as a pioneer of, wait, there's something called hempcrete. It's a spray-on insulation. It can remove 2 or 3 steps out of traditional building for home and for commercial. We should
Right.
add that you can use it in any kind of wall if you've got the framing up, if you've got the structure. So let's talk about what it replaces, because you mentioned it really quickly, but it does
Yep.
replace a couple of aspects. And then what is so different about your system? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I guess to frame that answer, I would say that one of the meditations when, considering or working with hempcrete, and one of the biggest departures from the contemporary American, residential envelope, if you will, is this idea of vapor permeability. So quite often, the way that we build in the United States, think, big builders, tract builders, Ryan Homes, Toll Brothers, we make air and watertight boxes, and then we handle things like, heating, cooling, dehumidification, humidification. We handle all of that mechanically because the system that they're building with is not naturally able to manage humidity and moisture. So when you hear people talk about hempcrete, they'll say it's breathable. What we mean by that we do not mean that there is air moving through the wall. Okay. So airtight, but vapor permeable are the two meditations for when you're constructing with hempcrete. The traditional method for achieving that is to use a lime or clay plaster on the inside and outside face as the finish on top of the hempcrete, which does two things. It makes it airtight, but it does also allow for the free transfer and movement of water and moisture vapor, which is critical. So think about living in a home, cooking, cleaning, showering, even two people breathing in a room at night expel 8 liters of water. It's crazy, right? Just exhaling, you are creating moisture in a space. Now, how well does your home handle that, right? Things like black mold, we hear about it all the time. They're constantly updating and changing code to address issues that have been created by previous code cycles where you're creating these really, terrible interior air quality environments that are too humid. You're creating mold in your ducts. We really don't have a good grip on that in the United States as a construction industry. So I like to refer to Hempcrete and what we're doing as high performance construction. Yes, it is natural building. Yes, we are using, a bio-based insulation material, but the reality is we're building and we're creating high performance structures, right? We're building structures that are able to respond to temperature changes much more evenly, that are able to balance that interior humidity to create, healthier interior air quality and be not so reliant on mechanical inputs, right? So we're cutting down on the costs of heating, cooling, dehumidification, humidification, all by investing in our envelope, right? And I think that's really important when we're educating people about hempcrete. We are talking about high performance construction. If you compare hempcrete to a method like passive house, for those who are familiar, passive house is a method of, creating a very high performance envelope with contemporary materials that often leads to moisture vapor issues because you are creating such a tight envelope. With hempcrete, you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting that air tightness, but you're also getting the ability for the material, your walls, to naturally buffer and manage moisture and humidity and thereby create a healthier interior air quality without
So
having to spend money.
operationally, then
Exactly.
operationally, when you are using this, even in industrial applications and for commercial projects, especially again, retrofit. If you have a
Yep.
building that was built in the 90s, we're going to work on one together very soon now. It's part of a very exciting project for Legacy Fiber Tech. My favorite guys down in here I am in North Carolina.
Yep.
So it's you can upgrade any existing place that probably has some issues underneath the carpet, in the wall space,
Yep.
behind the paneling, and you can utilize this material in harmony with hempwood, laminated plywood, steel structures, all of it. It just harmoniously upgrades. So it's very, very high tech, but it's also rooted in the most natural
Decidedly low tech.
applications.
Yes. Yes.
Excitedly low tech to affect and
Yeah.
create high tech. I love that.
Yep.
That talk about
Yep.
an oxymoron.
And
So
and
go
we're
back to
we're
the your Easy. You have a very specific system
yep.
that your company is based on. I want people to understand a little bit more about that so they can
Sure.
understand that
Yeah.
you went from building houses. It used to take 2 to 3 weeks, let's say, to do a hempcrete,
Or
right?
more.
Layer that all in
Yep.
or
Yep.
more for a small
Yep.
house. And now I'm understanding because I just saw one of your projects. I went to visit the site, 2 to 3 days.
Yep.
You've got that hemp insulation sprayed in. So talk
Yep.
about that.
Yeah, so we when we first started, again, we were taught, and I learned, and I encourage people to learn first the traditional method of installing hempcrete, which is doing it by hand tamping, cast in place. Basically, you're creating a void with a pair of slip forms. So you've got two pieces of plywood on either side of the wall that create a void into which you dump, spread out, and then tamp the material. It's very accessible, right? You don't need anything other than basic carpentry tools and skills and a handful of good friends to pull this off. It's wonderful for a community build. But as you can imagine, it gets to be very painful once you get up to about chest height. It's all fun and games until those forms
Until
get
those
up to
upper
about chest
arms have
height.
to get
Yep,
engaged and
yep,
think
and then
about
you're
packing a sandcastle, if you will. It reminds me of a sandcastle. Remember, we used to, okay, I'm aging myself here, but back in the day, we had little plastic containers and buckets, and you'd fill it and tamp it down and dump it out, and right.
yep.
So that's kind of the image that I'm holding.
Imagine doing that up on scaffolding and being up really high on a wall and handing buckets up. So the first couple of projects I did again were cast in place, and I realized pretty quickly that, again, wonderful thing to do as a community, wonderful thing to learn, but not a great answer for breaking into the larger and the contemporary construction scene, right? So how could I imagine myself being a contractor who, would be capable maybe of doing, I don't know, two or three of these a year, versus what we're doing now, where even I am not fully booked. I'm sorry to say, for those of you
Oh,
listening, we're
you
not
will
fully booked.
be.
We are very
Oh, you
available.
will be. We have some really
um,
big things coming up. I have a lot of people. We'll get into that later.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yes.
So we sought out, a different method, and there are a couple different answers to this. Everybody's seen them. There are, precast blocks, panel module units, and then in our case, spray application. And to be quite honest, we have now done projects where we've combined spray application with precast blocks, pre-made panels. We've done a lot of that, and we've found good mobility for this system into that. So in 2019, Hempitecture hosted the U.S. Hemp Building Summit in Ketchum, Idaho. It was a sort of I would say, I think a lot of us that attended look back at that as sort of a landmark moment in the industry. It was sort of a kickoff. We had a lot of the well-known names from Europe, Sergey, Dr. Hemphouse, Alex Sparrow, Steve Allen. We had a lot of these guys whose books we have, right? Like I have read Alex's book, I have Steve's books, and I had read them. Like this is like meeting your heroes, right?
I
To
was
your
just going to say that there are heroes. They're the
Yep, yep.
foundation
To
of what we've learned and who we learned
to
it
your
from.
And to your point earlier, one of the magical things about where we're at in this space is that we still have access to those people. These aren't books that were written 50 years ago. These aren't guys that,
Right.
have passed away and that we can't go and talk to and learn from, right? So that's one of the really cool things. We had access to them. Another one of those people is my business partner now, Damian Balmer. I had the chance to meet Damian, his wife Celine, and his son Esteban. They traveled from France to Idaho for that show in 2019. And it was the first time that any of us got to see the Izzy system. Funny enough, it was a bit of a failed demonstration. They had gotten too small of an air compressor, and the machine didn't really work the way it was supposed to. Now, none of us knew that because we didn't know what we were looking at. But I did. I understood what I was seeing. And the innovation was there are many different kinds of spray application technologies in Europe, most all of which are some combination of a loose fill insulation blower that blows the herd dry and a mortar pump sprayer that sprays the binder onto the herd as it's
And then
exiting
it
the
creates
lance,
that
and then
cohesive
it sort of
emerges.
mixes in the
Mm-hmm.
air, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I did my research. I was looking around at those and I saw them and I thought, man, that looks really messy. The technology of combining the materials at the lance, your distance from the wall has an impact on the mix ratio. So when you stand back and look at one of those walls, you can see areas where there wasn't enough binder and then there's too much binder. And so it's a very sort of inconsistent mixture. Damien's innovation with the Easy system was to come up with a mixture design that could be pre-mixed just the way that we do for cast in place, right? So you put the herd, the binder, and the water all in a mixer and you mix it together, and then it gets introduced to the system. So that was the innovation. I knew what I was looking at. I understood what I was looking at. And again, I think I told you this on the phone. There's a sort of a very ominous picture of me at that event, total tourist, right? At this point, I am 100% hemp industry tourist. I'm holding the lance, and grinning like the Cheshire Cat, while everybody else is behind me being redirected away from the failed demonstration by Maddie of Hempitecture. So there's a
God
picture of me
bless those
holding the
guys.
lance.
And what
Yep,
a great
yep.
conference that was too.
Yep,
It's
yep. So I,
yeah.
I, I met Damien and I walked up to him and I said, "Wow, that was amazing." And he was all angry and said, "Oh, it didn't work." But from that point, I bought my Easy system at that time from Hempitecture. I went home, invested in it. I bought a trailer, I bought a mixer, I bought an air compressor, I bought, let's say like 50 or $60,000 worth of stuff. I invested everything that we had into that system. Everything that we had managed to build into Americhanvre, me and Mel, all went into building out that system. And then, of course, 2020 came around, COVID came around, and I thought,
Yeah.
oh my God, I made a huge mistake, right? But that wasn't the fact. And I think that, people became more intentional about, their lives, their homes, as a result of the COVID pandemic. It was one of the few silver linings of the whole thing is that we had 2 weeks to sit there and reconsider everything, right? People were in their homes more even than they are normally, right? We spend 90% of our time inside of a
I
structure.
remember reading a statistic that specifically
Yeah,
said, and I'm like you, I am a glass half full. I always find the silver linings.
yeah.
And even when something doesn't work out in the way or the format that one expects, that's another universal God wink push in that
Yeah.
direction very clearly. Because the statistic I read, and I was living it, right? I
Yeah,
worked mostly from
we
home, was a
all were.
single mom doing
Yeah.
my thing.
Yep.
And it said people are reinvesting more in creating and enhancing and improving their current living environments. Now, this is
Absolutely.
also, we're seeing a huge boom in construction here in the North Carolina area and South Carolina, and unbelievable how much growth is happening in the Southeast right now, which is
Right.
why I'm focused on this corridor. But it made sense. We're home, we're paying attention, we're becoming more present in relationship with our families, our communities, our
Absolutely.
structures, how healthy we feel. It really raised to a higher level of consciousness, good, bad, ugly, everything, believe it, fake, not real, whatever
Right.
caused all of this. We were all in environments and we looked around and said, what more can we do here? How
Yep.
can I improve? Wellness became so significant. So, in a weird way, this really pushed you into, they say that necessity is the motherhood of invention. I say that often.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's what happened. So
Yeah.
now you're the only Arizy person out there. You're the only one that has this technology in the United States that I'm still aware of. And I'm going to help you get that out there. I have a lot of people already asking me how they can. We'll talk about franchises. We want to educate. We want to bring this to more people. We want to make it available in their communities because there only is one Shira, one Cameron, one Melissa. But there are a lot of people very interested in doing this as a custom build, but also what do we need in terms of the industry? Because I now have real estate agents and architects. We're trying to expand this conversation. That's why we're talking right now. How do you see that playing out? What would your dream next step connection be?
Yeah, I would say again, we just to clarify, we do now have a network of owner operators across the country. So since then, we've domesticated the technology. We have the equipment is now being built in the United States. We are weeks away now from having our first American-made binder for the system. We are still importing our hemp herd from France. So to answer your question, one of the big things, especially in the Northeast, that we need is processing. You're seeing it happening sort of in the plain states and further west places like Montana and Texas and Iowa, or excuse me, Indiana. But we don't yet have good access here in the Northeast to the raw material, which again is the hemp herd, right? Everybody's growing CBD or cannabis in the Northeast and even, further south on the East Coast. We have very few yet examples or, processors that are focusing specifically on fiber industrial hemp. There are a couple in North
Notice
Carolina.
that name right there, EcoSynergy.
Yep.
Hello, that's
Yep.
part of what we're here to do. So, yes, we're working on it
Yep.
with our network. So,
Yep.
absolutely, that is.
Shout
And there are a
out.
lot of people
Yeah.
I know globally as well that
Yep.
are interested in bringing in processing to, I want to grow
Right.
hemp. Great. What do you want to grow it for? Here's what I recommend you grow it for
Yep. Yeah.
and
So
open a franchise.
in North Carolina, you have biofill. There's a guy, David Canby, that's been working on this for a long time. He's getting close, if not already arrived. One of the big things that's missing specifically is a an ASTM standard for building grade herd. So we have a lot of people now who have processing across the country, but there is no parity between what they're creating. They have no guidance as to say this is specifically what we need. This is another reason why we lean so heavily on France. They do have a building grade standard that's been established by a third party professional body in France for what constitutes a building quality hemp herd and an appropriate binder. So that's number one. Definitely, absolutely, call to action. Anybody who's listening that's doing processing, join ASTM, get it done. This is your homework. I've done my homework. I've worked on the residential building code. We've done fire testing. We're doing in-field performance monitoring of finished projects of our own system. Your homework is to get a standard, a building grade standard for hemp herd, Every other construction material has an ASTM standard associated with it yet. We do not yet have one for hemp-herd. The second level answer to your question is what we talked about on the phone the other day. Almost every home that we've done, except for one project in Newburyport, Massachusetts, that was a multifamily residential, the first commercial hempcrete structure in the United States, first commercial residential. Every other home we've worked on has been for wonderful clients who, a lot of whom are motivated, capable homeowner builders. They're GCing their own projects. The other half are people who've hired a capable and a friendly GC like Mike in North Carolina, the guy that did Page's, excuse me, the guy that did Page's house.
He's referencing,
But
by the way, since that probably wouldn't make sense to, that's a specific project that I had the honor of going to visit with someone, a client of mine that I'm trying to, again, bring these components together. I love building
yeah,
bridges. I love putting teams together. So
yeah,
we reference a specific, the name of a woman had a custom build
yeah,
project here in North Carolina. Yeah.
yeah. So, and the what is really missing again, even Paige's house, that's Paige's forever home. She is going to live there forever. She's going to enjoy and love that house for many years to come. But it is not on the market. You can't go right now as a young couple, someone who's retiring and trying to downsize. You can't do what you would expect to be able to do with any other type of house in the United States. You can't go on Zillow with your partner, fall in love with a property, call your real estate agent and say, "Hey, I want to go look at this. I want to make an offer on it." That does not exist yet for hempcrete construction. We don't have developers and builders who are building this way in order to turn around and sell the properties. So that, I believe, Shira, is the single most important thing. Like, you asked me, what's the light switch, right? Like, how do we
Mhm.
flip a switch here? The only way to do that is to make these buildings and make these homes available to people who are not a motivated, capable homeowner builder who is tip of the spear and is willing to go through the pain of building their own home or working with a GC to build their own home. Again, even if it's not hempcrete, building a home is stressful. Leave hempcrete out of it. Building a home is stressful. It can end in divorce. It can end in bankruptcy. It can end in all these horrible
It
things.
definitely causes a few gray hairs if it's not a
Yeah,
project you want to take on.
exactly.
So, right, we're
Exactly.
trying to
So
simplify.
the product has to be available on the market, right? And this is true of any product. If you can't go out and buy it, if you can't just say, you know what, I learned about this, this is really cool, here's one I want to buy. If you can't do that, then this industry will stay where it is, will be pigeonholed in with natural building, other natural building, where you are going to have to, spend all kinds of time and money to figure out how to do it. You have to find someone like me or one of our owner operators to come and do your project. It becomes a 2 to 3 year process for most people. What we need to have are, again, small to mid-sized developers. I don't have any fantasies of imagining that tomorrow Toll Brothers is going to call me and acquire the Easy system from me. Obviously,
Why not?
I would
I'm going to
love,
put that out there. I'm
I would
working on
love that.
that.
I'm
So that's
manifesting. I'm
right.
manifesting
We're manifesting. It's done. It
that.
is done.
The reality is we need small to mid-sized developers who are going to take a risk and say, you know what? I believe personally, and I think other people should believe that the demand is there. If these homes were on the market, people have to
Right.
understand, obviously, that they're investing in the envelope. You're not investing in hardwood floors and granite countertops and nice appliances. That's what you get. If that's what you're interested in, go to Toll Brothers, go to Ryan Homes. You can buy that right now.
Oh, and by the way, we can still include, I'm building a whole ecosystem. That is what EcoSynergy in our platform, Harmony House, is doing. We're building the network. You can have all of that too, but you
Absolutely.
might choose a hempwood countertop once you hear and understand the health benefits and all of that. That's all available, by the way. I do have the new website up that talks about all of the benefits, pest control, moisture control, HVAC, cooling and heating, cost
Yeah.
efficiency over the lifetime, durability, all of that. It's on ecosynergy.solutions. You should go check that out if people want to do a little follow up. There's some downloadable PDFs with a lot of what you and I have spoken about today. And to be perfectly honest, we're just starting. we're real, you and I and our team, we're just starting. Even though we've been here for years, this is it. This is the moment. So yes, we are manifesting those mid-sized builders and developers. And yes, people can
Invest in your envelope. Yeah.
invest in your envelope. I love that quote. I think we need to put that as the
Yeah.
hashtag for this session. I have a
Yeah.
whole bunch of other questions for you, but I think we should do a second segment of this because I
Okay.
know there's a lot
Yeah.
going on today, but I do want to leave with one question for you.
Sure.
If you could share one single thought about what has this journey so far taught you about resilience, entrepreneurship, and conscious leadership? What would you say is the most important takeaway of everything you've been doing since 2018?
It's been a huge learning curve. The one of the I think the most, and this is a sort of a thought process that was instilled in me by one of my early mentors, a woman named Judy Wicks. She lives in Philadelphia. Started the White Dog Cafe, many other philanthropic endeavors. I think one of the most painful things about modern American society is the destruction and the absence of community, right, and local self-reliance. We are so divided. The urban and rural communities are so unnecessarily divided. We are so dependent on each other, and I think one of the most terrible things that has happened in the last, let's say, 15 or 20 years in the United States is this sort of us versus them mentality, and I think that has been so damaging. And where I think hemp really excels, and bio-based, the idea of using bio-based materials for construction really excels, is in reuniting those two communities, right? Reuniting and healing that divide between the urban and the rural communities where, who's your farmer, right? That was one of the big things out of COVID. Like, people realized how quickly the store shelves empty when there's a panic. So, who's your farmer? Where do you get your eggs? Where do you buy your meat? Where do you buy your produce, right? I think, again, that was another one of those things that sort of that COVID sort of punctuated. So you have, that same spirit when it comes to building your home. Why, this is funny for someone to say who imports hemp herd from France, but why import building materials from halfway around the world? Why not use materials that can be grown locally, that can be, harvested locally, where that money can stay in your community? So, you know, personally in my journey, I think that the way that sort of manifested itself in my own journey was this realization, this recognition that I had to work as hard on building my own business as I did on building the industry around it. So many of the things that I've done, working on the residential building code, participating in various, organizations and associations, they have been necessary for my own business. But we've also been setting the table for our competition, which is something that you wouldn't find in an established industry, right? People in the larger construction industry, it's very siloed and cloistered, right? What people are doing, it's people do things behind closed doors, whereas in our industry, uh, one of the only ways for us to succeed has been linking arms with each other, joining with our colleagues, working on projects
Right,
together,
right.
passing ideas together, working on things like the residential building code, raising money, sharing, collaborating. I mean, I think that's probably been one of the most powerful aspects. Again, this idea that, we're not only working on building our own business, we're trying to build an industry around it. And that is true of the entire hemp industry. For anybody who's paying attention right now, the soul of the hemp industry is at stake right now. You
And
have,
it's
you have,
also about it is thriving at the same time because we're having these
yes,
conversations. And I have them every day. And I
yeah,
will literally tell you that I've never been more excited to be a part of this industry. That even though I didn't know exactly how, like you, I landed here, I did land here a long time ago. And the
right.
fact that you and I are having this talk right now, and it had just turned 11:11, by the way, just putting that out there for those that
Yeah.
know me well, that was significant. But what you just spoke could not be more true. And in terms of importing from France and the materials, we are stewards of each other in this planet. And
Right.
yes, we are work now focusing on the infrastructure and expanding. The technology is there, the interest is there. It's about communication and connectivity. That's what
Absolutely.
EcoSynergy is here to do. I mean, it's so exciting to me that literally one of my farmer friends here in North Carolina will be using the industrial textile hemp that he grows, the industrial fiber, sending it to another one of our buddies, turning it into hemp wood materials to be going back into the future of this beautiful project we have going on. And he can say, I grew the hemp that became this floor. To
Absolutely.
be able to
Yep.
have that ownership, that pride, and the jobs that we're going to create, the infrastructure we're going to support, the expansion. And yes, eventually we're all going to be sharing this globally. We're starting at home. We're starting in our backyards. We're starting with our farmers. One of my besties is upstate New York. She's got a wonderful wellness center, and she's also putting on the Homestead Expo. We're already all here. We just have to find each other. And
Yep.
that's what my job is. That's why I'm so honored that you are my guest today. I'm so grateful to you for the work you do. I can't wait to get started on our projects together and to help people learn how to franchise and get the materials themselves. So I'm in. I'm in all the way, and I'm very honored. Can we do a part two, please?
Yes, absolutely. Sure. I appreciate it. This has been awesome. And again, thank you for the opportunity and for everything that EcoSynergy is doing. This is very, very needed. All the education, all of the catalyzation that you can provide is super important. So always a pleasure to do things like this, and especially with you, Shira. I really appreciate
Thank you. And by the way, he does workshops, so there'll be a lot of information.
it.
Check our description box below. You'll have the website. Just reach out to me. Any questions for those who are watching this who want to jump in and learn and have a consultation about what their hemp project looks like. We're here. Thank you very much. My best to Melissa, to the kids, and we'll talk to you very soon.
See you, Shira. Bye. Thank you.